Dan and Amy, continuing to take your calls and texts about how you're going to celebrate Barack Obama Day in Illinois next year, August 4th. Raymond Barnett Facebooked me. Obama Day will be spent by me walking into small businesses and yelling at them, "You didn't build that." That's a good way to spend it. I mean, that's certainly in keeping. 312-642-5600, turnkey.pro answer line, 64636DA, turnkey.pro text line. Yesterday, Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General and the acting honcho with respect to the Russian collusion investigation, was on with Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday and talked about a lot of things, including an interesting question that Wallace asked Rosenstein per Trump's comments at that Huntington, West Virginia rally about here's what you should be investigating, Hillary's deleted emails and this and that. You know, do you take that as an order? And is the president, using the Justice Department, essentially is the implication, to prosecute his enemies or to push the prosecution of someone like a Hillary Clinton, the investigation and prosecution of someone like a Hillary Clinton, as a way to deflect attention away from himself? These are the implications. Here's what Deputy AG Rosenstein had to say.
When the president, because he can order the Justice Department to do things, when he says, here's what prosecutors should be doing, they should be looking at Hillary Clinton, do you view that as an order?
No, Chris, I view what the president says publicly as something he said publicly. If the president wants to give orders to us in the department, he does that privately. And then if we have any feedback, we provide it to him.
And will you tell me whether or not he's given you an order?
I won't, Chris, but I can tell you the president has not directed us to investigate particular people. That wouldn't be right. That's not the way we operate.
So every time we get an answer from somebody in the know, we get an answer that essentially says there's, despite his bloviations, there is no there with respect to President Trump. Now, Flynn, maybe Manafort, I don't know. But Rosenstein also said, hey, don't read too much into the convening of a grand jury. It doesn't necessarily mean that there will ultimately be indictments and criminal prosecutions.
What does it say when a prosecutor takes a case, in general, to a grand jury about the likelihood of indictments?
In general, Chris, it doesn't tell you anything about the likelihood of indictments because we conduct investigations and we make a determination at some point in the course of the investigation about whether charges are appropriate.
So there's the hyperventilation, and then there's the actual legal process, and then there's actually what we know based on the evidence that's publicly available at this time. And so what do you do to fill in the gap when all of the celebration and most of the cable news networks and inside the D.C. press corps is tamped down a bit by what the likes of a Rod Rosenstein have to say? Oh, well, you do a story where you talk to 75 Republicans or you talk to David Brooks and John McCain 37 and a half times each, and you say there's a shadow GOP campaign
there's a
afoot.
coup d'etat.
Yes, yeah. Right. For more on this topic and an assessment of that New York Times story that was also central to the blathering on the Sunday talk shows, we're pleased to be joined by David Drucker, senior political correspondent for the Washington Examiner, WashingtonExaminer.com. David, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, see you guys.
What about that New York Times story and this idea that there is skullduggery afoot within the GOP to, if not depose Trump, replace him in 20?
Well, I think what the story reported was that there's a lot of positioning going on for the possibility that Trump is not the standard bearer in 2020. But I also think it's about 2024 and preparations for the idea that maybe Trump runs in 2020 but loses, and you have a whole class of Republicans who have been eyeing higher office, who are up and coming, and aren't sure what Trump's future is, and they don't want to do nothing for 4 years and then, not have laid any preparations. And I think what this gets back to is the fact that Trump has not inspired a lot of loyalty among a lot of these Republicans. He doesn't know them. He still doesn't know them that well. And, given the way things have looked in the White House, there's just not a lot of faith that he's going to be there as a party leader. And I think part of this really gets back to the fact that Trump is the top Republican in the country, but he's not really a party leader in that he constantly is badgering the party as though he's an outsider and not of the party. And so I think a lot of these Republicans are just taking steps to make sure that their political future is in a good position should he not be around at some point. I don't think it's about trying to depose him. I talked to a lot of Republicans who also wonder whether Trump will be around at least in 2024. And so they want to be prepared. And the truth is, because the president has not really established a lot of relationships in the way normal Republicans do with the party apparatus, and is not of the party and is not a leader of the apparatus in the way other Republican presidents have been, there's a vacuum there, and so a lot of them are filling it. And part of that is just to, prepare, but part of it is just there aren't a lot of deep bonds between him and Republicans on the Hill and other, Republican governors, and so they're kind of going about their business.
I'm really of the mindset, though, that after one term, President Trump will be done. I mean, remember him on election night? He said, I'll be here for 2, 4, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, however long. And I think that he might get bored with being president and might want to go back out and make money. No, he did not know how long.
He didn't know how long the term was. That's why
he did.
Said
right,
7 years.
Exactly. Yeah. So do you feel that way at all? Is that ever in the back of your mind?
Look, I think everybody knows that the president loves to campaign, possibly more than he likes to govern. So I don't think there's any doubt, not in my mind as an analyst, that he's going to run for re-election in 2020. I mean, the truth is he's gotten his 2020 campaign effort off the ground faster than most presidents in their first term. He's already held fundraisers. He's got a standing committee. I mean, this is even faster than Barack Obama got busy on his second term.
He's doing campaign rallies all over the country.
Right. And these are campaign rallies. These are not policy rallies. He doesn't really talk too much about health care or tax reform. It's mostly greatest hits performance of his 2016 campaign rally. I think, what most of this is about is, yes, I mean, look, there's a special counsel investigation. Some people wonder if he'll run again. Some people wonder if he'll be able to run again. I think a lot of it is some people wondering if he'll win in 2020. But you have, I mean, this is a unique situation for a party. You have a president who, until relatively recently in his life, was not a Republican. He has not forged a lot of the connections and loyalties within the party and its apparatus that most presidents would have. And so there's kind of a vacuum there. And there's also, because of the lack of those bonds, this belief that, hey, it's okay if I go and do this because there's really going to be no repercussions. And, the party apparatus still needs to function. And so when you have a fundraising event in Iowa for the local county or the state party, they need a headliner. And you might as well go because you know when it's going to end up paying dividends. And so I understand why people look at this and they think that it's unusual because it is. I don't think there's anything wrong with the story. I think what all the New York Times story pointed out was a lot of these facts that are just not normal, because usually a president has forged a lot of connections and loyalties, and therefore, people only go about this in a way that is okayed by the White House, as opposed to freelancing. Yeah,
but here's the thing about that, and you point out something that's really interesting. We have a little bit of this dynamic in Illinois. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? I mean, he's an outsider playing the outside game. Well, that's where the overwhelming majority of the country is, and that's how he brought in people that also weren't voting Republican or voting at all, and essentially won the day. It's a lesson for the Republican Party, not necessarily to emulate Trump specifically, but perhaps his example in some respects. But it also makes it difficult on the governance side because all those guys inside the Beltway are used to worrying solely about, not all of them, but most of them, particularly those in safe seats, are just worried about the inside game and winning the inside game. And so it seems to me it's much less about Republican, Democrat, and much more about outside, inside.
Well, I mean, there's a little something to that. What I would say is that I think the president's missed an opportunity to establish insider connections in a way that his outside game can be more effective. Because whether you're an insider, you're an outsider. If you're an outsider, the most effective outsider candidates I've ever seen have paid very close attention to insider politics so that they have a loyal and hardworking party behind them. And they try not to, they don't always agree with the insiders. They don't always agree with, whoever is in the legislature that they're working with that is of their own party. But they do their best to not completely alienate them and antagonize them. And I think one of the things that President Trump has done is he has brought his combative outside style to Washington in a way that he's making it harder for Republicans in Congress to work with him because he is constantly badgering them, and he is not taking enough responsibility for the failures as well as the successes. And if you're not putting yourself politically on the line, let's say for health care reform, and you're treating it as those guys in Congress are doing this, then they're not going to want to put themselves on the line for him.
Well, and
that's why you end up with situations like this.
Let me go to another outsider-insider conundrum, and that's between Bannon and McMaster, which has been much advertised in the last week and reported upon. And one of the alleged points of conflict between the two is over Bannon wanting to remove Obama loyalists and some that have been removed, but he's got a lot more. And McMaster doing things like last week announcing that Susan Rice maintains her unfettered security clearance. Well, what the hell is that? Susan Rice is apparently, if not a target, someone who has been addressed with respect to illicit unmasking of individuals with respect to NSA surveillance. So there, to me, there is this outside-inside thing, and maybe Bannon's not always right, but the idea of removing Obama loyalists and putting in your own people, that seems to make a lot of sense to me, and he's running up against, professionals on the inside like McMaster.
Well, look, and I can understand how that might rankle some people, and I think, each of these cases maybe can be treated differently. There's been the administration has had a lot of difficulties in getting professional people in there because there's not just, whether or not you were an Obama loyalist, but whether or not you were a Trump loyalist. Rex Tillerson tried to get people hired at state. The president rejected them because they weren't sufficiently loyal to Trump. Same with Mattis over at Defense. And I think what McMaster is trying to do is run a competent, well-functioning National Security Council. I think that should be job one. And if they need to remove Susan Rice's security clearance because she did something wrong, so be it. The fact that she worked for President Obama, I don't think that should be necessarily grounds for removal. And if you've got capable staffers in there, because a lot of these people work across administrations, Republican and Democrat, so if they have a problem with a particular person they think is doing something particularly wrong, then I think there's good complaint there. I think the constant battle to purge on the part of some, I think, is not healthy for the president's team. What he needs is good information and good analysis so he can make the best decision possible based on the kind of foreign policy he wants to prosecute. I think too much has been made of loyalists. And remember, this president is not going to have, even a lot of Republican foreign policy professionals are not going to be that warm towards a America First Trump's foreign policy as he campaigned on. Then eventually you need somebody with experience to provide analysis. I mean, the test should be, are you going to provide good information and analysis? And just keep doing that, and it's up to the president to make decisions.
All right. He is David Drucker, senior political correspondent for the Washington Examiner, WashingtonExaminer.com. David, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot